Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive today. Have you ever stopped and really thought about what it means to be human?
Not just existing, you mean?
Exactly. Not just breathing and eating and all that, but what does it mean to live a truly good life?
It is a pretty fundamental question.
Right, what are we even doing here? And today we're going to explore that question with some help from a really insightful book called Cultivating Humanity, a philosophy for the ideal human being. It's kind of like a guidebook for living a more meaningful life.
Sounds like a good read.
It is. It really gets you thinking. So let's dive in. The first big question we're going to tackle is this whole idea of, are we born good or bad?
Or maybe neither.
Yeah. Are we blank slates, or do we come pre-programmed with certain tendencies?
That classic nature versus nurture debate.
Right. And it's something philosophers have been debating for centuries.
Definitely. And it's a tough one because there's evidence to support both sides.
I know. It's fascinating. On the one hand, you have people who believe that we're inherently selfish and that society is what keeps us in check.
Right.
And then on the other hand, you have people who believe that we're born with a natural capacity for empathy and compassion.
And then there are all shades of gray in between.
Exactly. So where do you fall on this spectrum?
I think it's a bit of both nature and nurture. We're
Yeah.
definitely shaped by our genetics and our biology.
Yeah.
But our experiences also play a huge role in who we become.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Think about Viktor Frankl.
Oh, yeah. Frankel's story's incredible.
He survived the horrors of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
But even after experiencing such unimaginable suffering, he still believed in the goodness of humanity.
That's the power of the human spirit.
It's remarkable.
Yep.
Even in the darkest of times, we can still find meaning and hope.
And he actually developed a whole form of therapy around this idea called logotherapy.
Logotherapy. That's a new one for me.
Yeah. It's all about helping people find meaning in their lives, even when they're facing really difficult circumstances.
So it's even if we're not all born good, we still have the potential for good within us.
I think so. We all have the capacity for both good and bad. It's just a matter of which seeds we choose to water.
That's a great way to put it. So maybe instead of asking, are we born good or bad, maybe the better question is, what choices are we making?
Exactly. What are we doing to nurture our better angels?
Okay, so we've established that we're not just robots programmed for good or evil. We have choices. But that leads to another tricky question.
Which is,
How do we judge others?
yes. Judgment, the human pastime.
Right, we all do it. But is it ever truly fair?
I think it's incredibly difficult to judge others fairly. We rarely have the full picture.
It's like we're looking through a keyhole. We only see a tiny sliver of someone's life.
And based on that tiny sliver, we make all sorts of assumptions about who they are and what they're about.
It's like that old saying, don't judge someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes.
Exactly. We can never truly know what it's like to be in someone else's skin.
And yet we judge all the time.
It's almost an instinct.
Right. But cultivating humanity reminds us that true wisdom starts with acknowledging how much we don't know.
Socrates said, "I know that I know nothing."
I love that quote. It's so humbling.
It reminds us that we're all works in progress. We're all constantly learning and evolving.
And that we should approach each other with a bit more humility and understanding.
Definitely. We need to be more open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
That we might be misjudging someone.
Absolutely. There's always more to the story than meets the eye.
Okay. So how do we move beyond judgment?
Well, the book introduces this concept called Vivek.
Vivek, what's that?
Think of it as like a superpower. The ability to see beyond those superficial judgments, to really discern what's true.
So it's not just about being non-judgmental. It's about seeing things with more clarity.
Exactly. It's about cultivating deep discernment.
That makes sense. But how do we actually develop Vivek?
It takes practice. It involves things like meditation and honest self-reflection.
So it's about being more mindful of our own thoughts and biases.
Right. And it also involves being open to different perspectives, engaging with people who hold different views than our own.
That's not always easy, though.
No, it's not. But it's essential if we want to break free from those narrow judgments.
So Vivek is like a muscle. We need to exercise it regularly if we want it to get stronger.
Exactly. And the more we use it, the easier it becomes to see past those superficial differences and connect with the humanity in others.
That's a beautiful thought.
It is, and it's something that I think we could all benefit from cultivating more in our lives.
I agree. So we've talked about nature versus nurture and the challenges of judging others. And now we have this concept of Vivek to help us see more clearly. But where do we go from here?
Well, let's delve into some specific insights from some brilliant minds who've grappled with these questions.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's hear what they have to say.
We were just talking about Vivek and how it can help us move beyond like those snap judgments we all make.
Yeah, but how do we actually put that into practice? You know? It's one thing to understand it intellectually.
Totally. But actually living it, that's the real challenge.
Right. So how do we become less reactive and more discerning in our daily lives?
That is the question. And I think some wisdom from great thinkers can help us here.
Okay, love that idea. Who should we start with?
Well, let's go back to Viktor Frankl.
Oh yeah, Frankl. He had some powerful things to say about finding meaning, even in the midst of suffering.
Exactly. And that's something we can all relate to on some level.
For sure, life is full of challenges.
It is. And Frankl believed that we always have a choice in how we respond to those challenges.
Even when things feel completely out of our control.
Even then. He said that we may not be able to control our circumstances, but we can control our attitude and our actions.
That's a powerful reminder.
It is, and it's something that I think we often forget. You know, we get so caught up in the external circumstances that we lose sight of our own inner power.
So it's about finding that inner strength, that sense of agency, even when things are tough.
Exactly. And that's really what logotherapy is all about.
Right, his whole approach to therapy.
Yes. It's based on the idea that the primary drive in humans is to find meaning in life.
So it's not just about being happy, it's about having a purpose.
Precisely. It's about feeling like our lives have significance.
And that search for meaning that can be a source of incredible strength.
Absolutely. It gives us something to hold on to even when things are falling apart.
It's like an anchor in a storm.
It is. And it reminds us that we're not just victims of circumstance, we're active creators of our own lives.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Frankl encouraging us to find meaning. But what about other thinkers? What other wisdom can guide us on this journey?
Let's turn to Plato.
Okay, Plato, the OG philosopher.
Right. And one of the most important things that Plato taught us through Socrates was the importance of humility.
Humility, I feel like that's something that's often lacking in today's world.
It is. It's all about me, me, me.
Totally.
Yeah.
But Socrates famously said, "I know that I know nothing."
Right, which is such a powerful statement because it acknowledges the limits of our knowledge.
We don't have all the answers.
We don't. And the sooner we accept that, the better.
It's about being open to learning, to questioning our own assumptions.
And to being willing to change our minds.
That's tough for a lot of people.
It is. We all like to think we're right.
Right. But if we're not careful, that can lead to dogmatism and closed-mindedness.
Exactly. And that's the opposite of what we're trying to cultivate here.
So we need to approach life with a bit more humility.
Definitely. Recognizing that we might be wrong.
And that there's always more to learn.
Always.
This reminds me of something we talked about earlier, Vivek.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
The more we cultivate Vivek, the more we realize how much we don't know.
Exactly. And that's actually a good thing.
Because it opens us up to new possibilities.
Right. It frees us from the need to be right all the time.
So we can approach life with a sense of curiosity and wonder.
Like a child.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got Frankl urging us to find meaning and Plato reminding us to be humble. Who else should we be listening to?
Well, let's not forget Nietzsche.
Nietzsche. Oh
Yeah.
boy, he was a bit of a firecracker.
He was. But he had some really important things to say.
Like what?
Well, he challenged us to question our values.
To not just accept what we've been told.
Right, to think for ourselves.
That's a pretty radical idea.
It is, but it's also incredibly important because if we don't question our values, we're just living on autopilot.
We're not really living, we're just going through the motions.
Exactly. And Nietzsche wanted us to wake up, to become more conscious of the choices we're making.
To create our own meaning.
Yes, and to not be afraid to challenge the status quo.
I can see how that could be pretty controversial.
It was and still is. But I think it's a message that we need to hear now more than ever.
Especially in a world where we're constantly bombarded with information and opinions.
We need to be able to think critically, to discern what's true for us.
To find our own path.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got these three amazing thinkers offering us different perspectives. Frankl urging us to find meaning, Plato reminding us to be humble, and Nietzsche challenging us to think for ourselves.
It's a lot to take in. But how do we put it all together? How do we actually become these ideal human beings we're aspiring to be?
That's the big question, right? It's like we have all these ingredients, but we need the recipe.
We need to know how to cook it all up.
Exactly. And that's where Cultivating Humanity comes in. It provides some practical guidance on how to actually embody these principles in our daily lives.
Okay, I'm ready for the recipe.
Yeah.
What are the key ingredients?
Well, one of the most important is empathy.
Empathy. That seems pretty basic.
It is, but it's also incredibly profound.
How so?
Well, it's not just about feeling sorry for someone. It's about truly understanding their experiences and perspectives.
Even when they're different from our own.
Especially when they're different from our own. That's when empathy is most challenging.
And most important.
Exactly. Because it's easy to empathize with people who are like us, who share our values and beliefs.
But it's much harder to empathize with people who are different from us.
Right, and that's where the real work comes in.
So how do we do it? How do we cultivate empathy for people who we don't understand or even agree with?
Well, it starts with listening.
Really listening.
Yes. Not just waiting for our turn to talk, but truly trying to see the world from their perspective.
To understand where they're coming from.
Even if we don't agree with them.
That's tough.
It is. But it's essential if we want to build bridges instead of walls.
And empathy isn't just an abstract concept. It has real-world implications.
Huge implications. It affects how we treat each other, how we resolve conflicts, how we build relationships.
It's the foundation of a compassionate and just society.
In a more peaceful world.
Okay, so empathy is key. What else is on the menu?
Well, along with empathy, Cultivating Humanity also emphasizes the importance of politeness and humility.
These seem like kind of old-fashioned virtues.
Maybe, but they're just as important today as they ever were.
Why is that?
Because they're about recognizing the inherent worth of every individual.
Regardless of their background, beliefs, or status.
Exactly. It's about treating everyone with respect and dignity.
Even when we disagree with them.
Especially when we disagree with them.
So it's about being civil.
Yes, and it's also about acknowledging that we don't have all the answers.
That we're still learning and growing.
And that we need each other.
We can't do it alone.
We can't. Okay, so we've got empathy, politeness, and humility. What else is there?
Well, what about love?
Ah, yes. Love. The most powerful force in the universe.
But also a word that gets thrown around a lot.
It does. What do you think it really means to cultivate love in our lives?
I think it's about more than just romantic love.
Absolutely. It's about love in all its forms.
The love we have for our families, our friends, our communities.
And even for humanity as a whole.
It's a big love.
It is. And it's something that we need to cultivate if we want to create a better world.
So how do we do that? How do we cultivate more love in our lives?
Well, I think it starts with being more mindful of the love that's already present.
The love that's all around us.
Exactly. And then it's about choosing to act from a place of love.
In our thoughts, our words, and our actions.
Exactly. Love is more than just a feeling.
It's a way of being.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's something that we can all practice every day.
Okay, so we've got empathy, politeness, humility, love.
This is a lot, but I'm feeling inspired.
Me too. But there's one more ingredient that I think is essential.
Okay.
What's that?
Mindful reflection.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's about taking the time to pause and reflect on our lives.
To look inward.
Exactly. To examine our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors.
And to see where we might be getting in our own way.
Exactly. Because we all have blind spots.
We all have patterns of behavior that are no longer serving us.
And mindful reflection can help us to become aware of those patterns.
So we can start to change them.
Right. It's about becoming more conscious of our choices.
So we can create the lives we truly want.
And the world we want to live in.
I like that. So mindful reflection is like the foundation for all of this.
It is. It's the soil in which these virtues can grow.
This is all so insightful, but it's also a lot to take in.
It is. There's a lot to unpack here.
So maybe we should take a break.
Yeah.
And when we come back, we can talk about how to actually put all of this into practice.
It's like a plan.
So before the break, we were getting into some really practical stuff about empathy, politeness, humility, love, and mindful reflection. You know, it's all great in theory, but how do we actually bring all of this into our everyday lives? It can feel overwhelming.
It's true. It's like, okay, all this stuff about becoming a better human, it's great, but where do I even start?
Right. It's like having all these ingredients,
Yeah,
but no recipe.
exactly. And that's where Cultivating Humanity really shines, because it doesn't just talk about these qualities in the abstract, it actually offers some concrete guidance on how to put them into practice.
Okay, perfect. So what's the first step?
Well, one of the most important things is to be mindful of the people we surround ourselves with.
So it's about our relationships.
It is, because the people we spend time with have a huge influence on us, whether we realize it or not.
It's like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly. So if we want to cultivate these qualities in ourselves, we need to be around people who embody those qualities.
So it's not just about finding people who are nice or fun to be around.
It's more than that. It's about finding people who inspire us to be better.
People who challenge us to grow.
Right, and who hold us accountable when we're not living up to our own values.
So it's like having a support system.
It is, but it's also about being selective about who we let into that support system.
Because not everyone is going to be a good influence.
Right. We need to be around people who are on a similar path.
Yeah.
We're also striving to become better human beings.
People who we can learn from and grow with.
Exactly. And the book actually gives some really specific advice on what qualities to look for in the people we surround ourselves with.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, it talks about the importance of finding people who are empathetic, humble, kind, generous, forgiving, all those good things.
So it's not just about what they say, it's about how they live their lives.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words.
Right. So we need to find people who are walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And when we surround ourselves with these kinds of people, it makes it so much easier to cultivate those same qualities in ourselves.
It's like we're creating a positive feedback loop.
Right. We're feeding off each other's good energy.
I like that.
Okay.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of surrounding ourselves with good people. But what about actually putting these qualities into practice?
Well, that's where the real work begins, right?
It's one thing to talk about empathy and compassion. It's another thing to actually live it.
Totally. And that's why Cultivating Humanity emphasizes the importance of action.
So it's not enough to just think about these things. We have to actually do something.
Exactly. It's about putting our values into practice in our daily lives.
So what are some examples of that?
Well, it could be anything, really. It could be volunteering our time at a local charity.
Or donating to a cause we believe in?
Or simply being more mindful of how we interact with the people around us.
Like holding the door open for someone.
Or offering a helping hand.
Or just listening with our full attention when someone is talking to us.
Exactly. It's about those small acts of kindness and compassion that can make a big difference in the world.
I love that. Because it shows that we don't have to do anything grand or heroic to make a positive impact.
We don't. It's about those little things that we do every day that add up over time.
So it's not about being perfect.
Not at all. It's about progress, not perfection.
It's about striving to be a little bit better each day.
Exactly. And about recognizing that we're all in this together.
We're all on this journey of becoming better human beings.
And we can support each other along the way.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. It's been a real pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Likewise. And I hope our listeners are feeling just as inspired.
I hope so too. Because ultimately that's what this is all about, inspiration. To become the best versions of ourselves.
And to create a better world for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. But before we go, I just want to remind everyone that Cultivating Humanity is a book that you can keep coming back to.
It is. It's full of wisdom and practical advice that you can apply to your life.
And if you're looking for more inspiration, be sure to check out our website and social media pages for more content like this.
We're always sharing new ideas and insights to help you on your journey.
Thanks again for joining us. And until next time, keep cultivating humanity.